it hasn't been this bad since the Tiananmen Square massacre. I'm very worried. I think many of us are very worried.
美国资深的国会议员、美国国会和行政当局中国委员会共同主席克里斯托弗·史密斯，长期以来非常关注中国的人权问题。在中国共产党第19次全国代表大会开幕前夕，我在史密斯议员的国会办公室对他进行了采访。他如何评价中国过去5年的人权状况，又如何评价即将完成第一个5年任期的中国国家主席习近平？他对香港有怎样的担忧？
The violence is coming from the government, not from the people.
近来关于中国该走和平演变还是暴力革命的道路的争论此起彼伏，他的观点是什么？1989年那场震惊中外的天安门广场大屠杀，又怎样改变了这位美国议员的职业生涯的中心
？Let us start with the upcoming 19th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, which will open on October 18th in Beijing. That will mark 5 years of the rule of President Xi Jinping in China. First, what is your assessment of Xi Jinping?
Well, unfortunately, on the human rights side, it hasn't been this bad since the Tiananmen Square massacre. He has been in a race to the bottom with North Korea when it comes to human rights abuse. The crackdown on people of faith, whether it be Tibetan Buddhists or Catholics or Christians or Uyghurs, whatever the faith happens to be, he's crushing it. And the use of torture, we've actually had hearings, I've chaired hearings on the pervasive use of torture against political prisoners and religious prisoners of conscience is unprecedented. And so he has a lot of blood on his hands. He's a very cruel dictator, and a lot of people just look the other way and act as if it's not happening. And, had large dinners for him when he visits capitals. He needs to be engaged, but he also needs to be held to account. And I would suggest that the United Nations and its multiple treaty bodies, but especially the Universal Periodic Review that they get, there needs to be a special focus on Chinese human rights abuses at the UN. And I would challenge Prince Zaid, the High Commissioner for Human Rights at the UN, to stop looking the other way when it comes to China and focus on the egregious, ongoing, pervasive human rights abuses committed by Xi Jinping.
Other legacies besides his...
No, I think that's the main one. I think he's also been unnecessarily militaristic. The expansion, particularly of the islands that now have become military bases, is very provocative. There is no natural enemy against China anywhere in the world. So why the big massive buildup if not for the projection of power? Couple that with the dictatorship and the cruelty of the human rights abuse that is pervasive, that's a very volatile mix for the neighboring countries of China.
China's human rights is so much worse. Why? What are the factors?
Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, a famous axiom that came from a British statesman. And I think it applies here. These individuals really have life or death power over people. And, and we've seen in all of history that when that happens, the cruelty against the weakest and most vulnerable is tragic beyond words. And that's what's happening. They crush people. If you don't conform to their will, if you don't do exactly what they say and you're in lockstep, if you speak out for human rights, watch out, they're coming knocking. When have we ever had, except in Nazi Germany, that we've had that kind of egregious human rights abuse? And China's doing it against its own women.
Xi Jinping's second term is highly expected to be confirmed at the coming 19th National Congress. So how would you see the trend in the coming 5 years? And how the United States would help in terms of help China?
Well, it's a great point. President Trump has already done a number of things to speak out against the human rights abuses of China. Number one, Secretary Tillerson designated China as a Tier 3 egregious violator on human trafficking. It was a long time coming, but finally they've been designated as the worst of the worst in this cruelty of modern-day slavery, both labor and sex trafficking. Secondly, on religious freedom, there's no doubt that China is a country of particular concern because of its ongoing repression of religion. Third, when it comes to the forced abortion program, the administration has defunded the United Nations Population Fund because of its complicity in these crimes against women and children in China. That our own China Commission, which is a very, very scholarly group of people, staff, who work these issues and try to ascertain what is the truth, suggests that there may be approximately 62 million missing females in China, largely, if not almost exclusively, attributable to the forced abortion program. That's happening under Xi Jinping's rule, and there's no suggestion that it's going to stop.
Last month, in August, 3 leaders, young leaders in Hong Kong, Joshua Wong, Nathan Law, and Alex Zhou, they were sentenced to 6 to 8 months in prison. How worried are you about Hong Kong's future, hearing that sentence?
I'm very worried. I think many of us are very worried that China is on a trajectory towards Hong Kong to make it just like Beijing and to become a repressive. One thing, it'll hurt its industrial capabilities. I mean, Hong Kong has been a power unto itself in terms of economic commerce, and the oxygen that has helped make that happen has been freedom. And you cripple that freedom, and you choke off that oxygen called freedom, and you'll see Hong Kong deteriorate as a great trading city. So it's in their own interest to have a Hong Kong that is free and robust. And unfortunately, they can't help themselves, they being Beijing, in crushing anything that even looks like freedom. And these 3 great individuals, prison sentences is wrong. The umbrella, movement, I think, has done wonders to wake up the world about the deteriorating situation. So we need to be standing foursquare behind the 3 and others who are part of that movement.
The New York Times and some activists are calling for the nomination of these 3 young leaders for the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
Are you for it?
I think it's a very good idea. We're looking at how do we go about doing that. It's interesting that back before he was named, I led the effort in Congress for Liu Xiaobo to get the Nobel Peace Prize. We also wanted Chen Guangzhen and Gao Zhizhang to be the 3 that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee would select. They did select Liu Xiaobo. So I think there needs to be a movement, and that will bring a lot of attention to this deteriorating situation in Hong Kong. There are so many hot spots in the world, and people only have so much focus that they can maintain. Well, Hong Kong's moving in the wrong direction very fast, so there needs to be a focus on that. And we have brave men and women standing up, as we see in Hong Kong.
So you think they deserve it?
I think they deserve it. We're looking at what to do about that. There are other people in the world that are deserving of it as well. But Hong Kong, maybe the whole umbrella movement, frankly, which is done, at great risk to themselves, prison being just one of the many terrible consequences for fighting for freedom.
Let's talk about Liu Xiaobo, the Nobel-winning Chinese dissident. After he passed away on July 13, you introduced the bills and called for defending his legacy and rescuing his wife Liu Xiaobo.
Exactly.
Why is it important to defend Liu Xiaobo's legacy?
China's government has tried to smear him like they do all political prisoners, but especially when he received the Nobel Peace Prize, and to not even allow his wife to go and accept it, but then it got even worse, to put her under house arrest and to grossly mistreat her. He got the Nobel Peace Prize because he advocated for peaceful change. And that's what we want, peaceful, no violence, peaceful. The violence is coming from the government, not from the people. Liu Xiaobo was a great man. He was executed. You know, he died of cancer as far as we can know, but frankly, where was the early detection? Where was the intervention? And then when we asked that he be allowed to go to the United States or Germany, that was all denied. Why was that denied? To allow this great man to get humanitarian medical treatment. It just speaks to the cruelty and the darkness of heart that unfortunately reigns in many of the dictatorships' elite, including Xi Jinping.
Yes, Liu Xiaobo called for a peaceful transition in China. But his death has made many people feel that the door to a peaceful transition in China has closed. Recently, there is a hot debate going on peaceful transition versus violent revolution. So what's your take on
Well, I think the only way forward is for peaceful transition. I think the governments of the world need to look at China the way we looked at South Africa under its shameless policy of apartheid, which was racism on steroids. Well, we need to look at the ongoing and pervasive and escalating human rights abuses by China. And even though they're a world power and a world player, hold them to account in the same way we held South Africa to account with very, very serious sanctions against the country. And it needs to be done. We can do it under the Global Magnitsky Act and begin compiling lists of individuals who torture, who oppress women through forced abortion and forced sterilization, who commit other crimes, including torture and other political, other crimes. So they are precluded the ability to engage in economic commerce here, can't get visas to come to the United States, they'll be denied that. So that avenue is like low-hanging fruit that the United States of America has that it needs to do.
And right now, no Chinese officials.
As far as I know, there's nobody on a global Magnitsky list yet, but the law is brand new. You know, it's only been around for several months, not even a year, and so we're working towards implementation.
You know, China has a long tradition of political dissidence.
Yes.
For your long work with a lot of Chinese dissidents, do you see the current Chinese dissident movement has a goal?
Oh, I think it does. I think, it's a goal that often is focused on, like, people who are fighting for religious freedom, care about all the other human rights issues, but, they major in fighting for religious freedom. But at the end of the day, they understand that China has acceded to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They sit, I think, unfortunately, on the Human Rights Council. They should be, thrown off. How can you have rogue states sitting there in judgment of other countries? You got to get your own house in order. I mean, China uses horribly repressive means that, again, are reminiscent of what the Nazis did by the Gestapo. But the dissidents know that, and they take unbelievable chances in the hopes that someday China will matriculate from a cruel dictatorship to what the people really deserve, a flourishing and robust democracy.
Some has concluded that the Chinese overseas dissident movement is a failure in the past almost 30 years. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't think it's a failure. When you have a Chinese government that has all guns, has a secret police, are monitoring the internet, are repressive and get money from the West, especially the United States, that enables it through its commerce by not linking human rights with trade. It was Bill Clinton that delinked in 1994. That was a capitulation to dictatorship by Bill Clinton. And I think that was the start of the Chinese government saying, all they care about is profits, they don't care about human rights. But I have to tell you, the Chinese government is wrong. There are many people, Republicans and Democrats, who care deeply, and the American people, about human rights in China.
What they have achieved?
Well, I think what they've achieved is keeping hope alive, keeping members of Congress and members of the European Parliament and members of individual parliaments, including in the UK, aware, in Germany, aware of what's going on, of calling on us in policy-making positions to speak out for the dissidents, and that's all good. But again, there are too few of them, to redouble all of our efforts, mine, theirs, to speak out on behalf of those who are suffering, to demand that the United Nations, which has been feckless and weak and vacillating. You know, they signed but not ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. How about implementing it? You know, how about, you know, being serious about human rights?
In terms of improving China's human rights and keep the hope for democracy vibrant in China, what do you think Western free media like Radio Free Asia can do?
Well, Radio Free Asia, I think, has played a critical role in getting to people the truth, to let them know what they don't know from their own state-run media. The Tiananmen Square massacre, on Google even, because I had the hearings on it, was completely scrubbed and it didn't happen. Just didn't happen. We had Che Hatian, who was the operational officer who was major role in the Tiananmen Square massacre. Bill Clinton invited him to the White House and gave him a 19-gun salute, and when he went to the Army War College, Che Hatian said nobody died at Tiananmen Square. Well, I put together a hearing in 2 days. I had people that were there, people who were journalists from the People's Daily, who actually went to prison for a while because he tried to report on the truth. And we had a Time magazine correspondent, and of course a number of Chinese students who were actually there. And they talked about the bloodshed, they talked about the killings. Lots of people died. Of course, what we did in responding to that, none of it was carried in China. They just carried his big lie, nobody died at Tiananmen Square. And then he still gets a 19-gun salute on the White House lawn from Bill Clinton. What's the dictatorship to say about that, which has not been reversed over all these years? It's like the Americans pay lip service to human rights and then they don't follow up. Well, that's got to change, and that's where the diaspora, that's where the overseas human rights activists need to say, you know, to America and to the Europeans and others, you've got to be a lot tougher. These guys play for keeps, and they murder people in their prisons in the Laogai, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, so like Radio Free Asia, the Western free media can help spread it.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. You know, where will people get truth, even if there's a diversity of opinion, but still get people who are seeking the truth rather than mere propaganda, which is what they get from the People's Daily and from all their other sites, which just act as conduits of message for the Communist Party.
When did you get this interest in Chinese issues?
I really got it early in my career. I got elected in 1981. The immediate threat, as we perceived it, was from the Soviet Union. So my first human rights trip was to Moscow in Leningrad in 1982, but very quickly began working on China. When Tiananmen Square happened, we were all hoping, you know, this was the beginning of a new China like we saw in the East Bloc's countries and in Russia, and it didn't happen. And so that's when I doubled down on my efforts and began working even harder on China, believing that what was thought to be, you know, a change was met with brutality that ought to be taught in every school in China. It's not taught in any school in China. And people should know that sorry history, because it's all attributable to the Communist Party. People should have multiple parties. I remember in the Clinton administration, they were all happy that there were going to be all these elections and multiple candidates. It was one big fat facade. Big lie, another big lie. Thankfully, Radio Free Asia cuts through the nonsense and just tells the truth.
Congressman